I bring warm wishes to all of you from Coimbatore. I am happy and delighted to be part of this session Dialogue with Boys, which is going global for the first time in partnership with ICPH and Shanti Ashram, and we have a separate chapter called IAP Adolescent chapter, since adolescence is an age group which has its own unique health issues. These health issues are not only physical but also mental, social and psychological health issues come up during this phase. So we pediatricians have to be well equipped with the knowledge and also the necessary skills to deal with adolescence day in and day out. Adolescence is the phase which is a challenge for the girls and boys who go through this, but also to parents, teachers and the society to how to handle them. So in order to do this effectively and help our adolescents to cope up the stress which happens during this phase, we need to have a basic understanding of the biology and the changes which happen in the body and brain. Adolescence is a phase which is sandwiched between childhood and adulthood. It starts from the age of 10 years and ends by 19 years. This adolescence word is derived from the Latin word which means to grow, and it is divided into early, mid and late adolescence based on the age group, and this is a phase when various changes happen in the body of every adolescent boy or girl. During this adolescent phase, every child has to juggle a lot, meaning they have to perform multiple tasks. They have to handle the emotional changes happening in their body. They have to also handle the sexual reproductive changes which happen, and also develop an identity for themselves, resist peer pressure, build strong relationships and acquire necessary skills for their future and the path which they have set for themselves. In order to achieve all these things, this adolescent health has to be very well maintained, and this is the key for them to continue to perform well during this phase. The most important hallmark of adolescent phase is puberty. Puberty is a term given to the sexual maturity or the maturity of the reproductive system of every boy or girl, along with the growth spurt that happens during this phase. When we say growth spurt, the rapid increase in weight and height of every adolescent boy or girl. In a boy, if we take, the puberty starts from around 12 to 13 years and goes on for about 5 to 6 years period and ends by 17 to 18. And during puberty, the weight gain is close to 50% of the adult weight, and about 15 to 20% of adult height is also achieved during this phase. And along with this growth spurt, there are psychological and social changes along with emotional changes which happen in every adolescent, meaning you start making your own decisions, you start thinking abstractly, start taking roles of adults, and also sexual maturity happens during this phase. How all these changes are achieved during puberty? The important reason being the male hormone testosterone. Testosterone is the hormone secreted by the male reproductive organ testis, and this is triggered by the pituitary gland which is situated at the base of the brain. So the pituitary starts its peak function during beginning of puberty, and the hormone gonadotropins, meaning the FSH and LH, are responsible for the sperm production and testis to secrete testosterone. Growth hormone is another important hormone from the anterior pituitary, and this is responsible for the increase in height, the bone and muscular growth which happens in every boy during this phase, and also the increase in weight. Having seen the changes happening in the body of an adolescent boy during puberty, what happens to the brain during adolescence? Scientists have been thinking for long that growth of the brain is almost complete by the age of 5 to 6 years, and not much of changes happen during adolescence. 90% of the adult brain weight is also reached by the age of 5 to 6 years. But after the arrival of MRI and repeated scanning of adolescent brains, it has been shown that radical changes take place in the brain of adolescents too. And this change is called as pruning. To explain pruning, we can take the example of a plant. we prune the plants and cut out the unnecessary stems and branches which grow wild, so that you increase the fruitfulness and the yield from every plant. In the same way, the adolescent brain neurons are also pruned, and the unnecessary grey matter neurons are severed, and it increases the efficiency with which the adolescent grey matter functions, because more efficient and precise accurate functions are essential starting from adolescence. And this process is called as pruning. And this pruning doesn't happen in all areas of the brain at the same time. For example, the areas which control hearing, vision, spatial perception, the limbic system, the emotional control, these centers mature much before the prefrontal cortex, which is necessary for high order thinking skills. And this is the reason why adolescents react more, they emote more, and they show a lot of behavioral changes, and also function very efficiently and with great precision when it comes to visual and hearing acuity. And this understanding is very important for all of us, so that we deal with our adolescents empathetically. So this pruning process ends only by early 20s, and this understanding is very vital to know why adolescents take risks during their lives. This risk-taking behavior of adolescents is seen in both boys and girls. If we see statistics, 16 to 20-year-old, that is the late adolescent phase, they are twice as likely to meet in car accidents when compared to adults. And with girls we see the problem of teenage pregnancy, and habits like gambling, cigarette smoking, or drinking, or usage of illicit drugs, all of them have their beginning during late adolescence. And these risk-taking behaviors happen because of the maturity of the limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain, much before the high order thinking skill center, which is the prefrontal cortex. This understanding will help us as parents, teachers, and members of the society to help our adolescents to cope through this phase better and keep away from unnecessary risk-taking behaviors which can put their life into danger. The unique health issues which we see in our adolescents in the present technology-driven world is tech dependency. During this COVID pandemic, education is also happening online. Most of the sessions which our boys or girls learn is also happening through our gadgets, and by the click of a gadget you are able to get all the informations. So considering the positive aspect of technology on one side, we should also be forewarned and supervise our adolescents when they indulge with the usage of social media. We face problematic internet usage syndrome in our adolescents, which is becoming increasingly common. So it's our primary duty as doctors, as parents and teachers that we inculcate the right usefulness of technology to our adolescents in order to avoid tech dependency. The next important health issue is emotional, meaning the hormone testosterone is responsible for many of the emotional changes which happen in the body and brain of the boy. They become increasingly self-conscious. Their looks matter a lot during this phase, and they spend a lot of time in dressing. Appearance is very, very important. The attitude which comes along with the age group of adolescents, and they also tend to show some amount of behavioral issues like aggression and violence. This can be violence towards opposite sex or violence within the same sex, and they become extremely sensitive and they show mood changes very often. So even though we say the hormone is responsible for much of the changes, we should also understand that it is our prime duty to keep the emotions under control, having understood the change which happens in the body and brain, and also take the help of the seniors like parents or your role model or the teachers in order to cope up with the stress. Emotions take a roller coaster ride. On one side, our adolescents are sometimes elated, super excited, and on the other hand, they also show low self-esteem and mood changes, become dull, and they want some lone time for themselves. So this kind of vast emotional changes are very commonly seen in adolescents, and the reason being their inability to manage stress whenever it happens during this phase. And one of the important emotional or behavioral change which we see in boys and girls is depression. So along with aggression and violence on one hand, you also see depression on the other hand, and the reasons are the change in sleep pattern, changes in appetite, and changes in behavior. All these things will play a role in managing emotions during this phase. Coming to nutrition, very important during adolescence, because the body and brain demand more during this phase. And this phase is very challenging as your emotional center is already matured. You tend to move towards junk food, tasty food rather than healthy food. So what is in my plate is a question which you have to ask every time you sit for a meal. So the meal should have a right mixture of macro and micronutrients. Macro meaning the carbohydrate, protein and fat component, and micro meaning the vitamins and minerals. The need for vitamins and minerals is more during adolescent phase because of the rapidly growing muscles and bones. 50% of the plate should be filled with fruits and vegetables of various colors and textures, which is very important to get a right mix of vitamins and minerals. 25% of your plate should be filled with proteins, which can include both vegetarian and non-vegetarian protein. A dairy product should be introduced with every meal, and 25% can be carbohydrates, which should be preferably whole grains, whether it is wheat or it is rice, in order to maintain the B complex availability from grains. So let us stick on to a healthy diet in order to give the continuous supply of nutrients to the rapidly growing body and brain. Another important aspect which we have to remember is sleep hygiene. Like we say, hygiene and health go together. We have to maintain a hygiene with regard to sleep as well. 8 hours of sleep is compulsory for every adolescent. This time is essential not only for the secretion of growth hormone and also for the effective refreshing time so that you can function efficiently the next day. So brain also needs rest, and this 8 hours of sleep becomes vital for every adolescent. So to sum up, let us ensure a healthy lifestyle for our adolescents, which includes a healthy diet giving ample supply of vitamins and minerals, carbohydrates, proteins and fats in right amounts, exercise for at least 2 hours a day to keep them fit and avoid obesity, adequate amount of sleep at least for 8 hours a day, and also cope up with the stress during this phase by acquiring necessary life skills to face the challenges. And last but not the least, keep away from risk-taking behaviors which can threaten the performance or the life of the adolescent. And to achieve all these things, it is very essential that as parents, doctors and teachers, we have proper understanding of the brain and body of adolescent. With these few words, I thank all of you for your patient listening and wish every adolescent to be the hero of his own story.